whole family knew that Barbara was worth a considerable sum of money.
I knew right away something was wrong. She was just the best mother you could possibly have.
She was still alive when he nearly decapitated her.
There's no way to know what's in the mind of this perpetrator. When we started the autopsy, we had a mystery.
The killer was meticulous in trying to clean up forensic evidence from the crime scene. These are signs of a serial killer in the making.
Because he was a pretty shrewd guy, diabolically shrewd.
I'm kind of struggling with this, and it's made me sick.
This is something we definitely need to look into.
The wolf came to the door, and she let in the wolf, and that's what killed her.
A shocking murder becomes a dark mystery. The victim's body holds the key to convicting the killer. Every fiber is a clue. Every wound is a piece of the puzzle. In these cases, it's up to the medical examiner to find the crucial evidence and catch the murderer. This is Secrets of the Morgue.
Monroe is down at the southern part of Ohio. It's a tight community.
It is very historical in nature, from homes that were built in the 1860s.
Mount Pleasant is a retirement community. It's been in the city of Monroe for a long time.
But on a chilly October night, something isn't right in Mount Pleasant.
It was a Monday night, and my husband and I were, kind of ready to go to bed, and the phone rang. It was my Aunt Pat. And she said, oh, Donna, have you heard from your mother? I've been trying to get in touch with her, and I haven't heard from her. I thought it was odd, but not alarming.
Barbara Howe is an active, healthy 87-year-old living in one of the Mount Pleasant houses.
And I didn't even think to try to call my mother at that time because I thought, well, she's in bed. So I go into work in the morning, and I drove up at lunchtime. Walking into her bedroom, there was a towel that was just sort of strewn on the floor. She would have hung it up. She's a creature of habit, and she is extremely tidy. Her bedroom light was on. Well, this is at noon. I mean, this is daylight. If she was going to be going out for any length of time, she would turn that light out. That's her natural order of things. And that's when we called the police and put in a missing persons report. Detective Myers took it very seriously. He didn't dismiss it. He could tell that, I was very upset, that I knew something was wrong.
I actually had one of our crime scene technicians photograph the entire inside of the residence to preserve digitally what is there and how it lays out in the house. I felt it was necessary.
No one has any idea about what could have happened to this much-loved grandmother.
The next day, we just drove around. My mother, she might go to the library, she might go to the grocery store, she might go visit some friends in Hamilton, but, she kept her circle, pretty narrow. You can't believe it's really happening. It's probably the most unusual or unnerving thing I've ever been through. You don't even let yourself go there. Surely there's an answer to all this that makes sense.
Police issue an all-points bulletin on Barbara's missing car.
We know that there's no activity on her credit card. We know there's no activity on her cellular phone. We actually fly the local area in circles with a helicopter looking for her vehicle.
After 3 days of scouring the area, police get a lead.
We receive a call from Middletown Police Department that they have located her vehicle.
Detective Myers rushes to Middletown, some 10 miles north of Monroe.
The vehicle's located in a parking lot at an apartment complex. It's an overflow parking area. It's not near any of the apartment buildings. So that immediately struck me as odd. As I do a cursory walk around of the vehicle, the inside is very dusty and dirty. And it seemed very out of place because the rest of the car was very clean. One of the things that immediately grabs you is there's a little tuft of hair sticking out where the trunk lid would meet the back bumper. I don't believe this is going to end well. When the trunk is open, we find the body of a elderly female. Right away, I know it's a homicide. She is absolutely soaked in what smells like cleaning products. She's found with only slip pants halfway down her legs and nothing else. Also, all this dust and debris and dirt is all over her body. And you look at it, you realize this is vacuum cleaner contents that's been dumped in the scene.
Why did they do this? Why her?
Investigators are determined to find Barbara's brutal killer and provide justice for her family.
My mother, she was beautiful. She was so healthy, mentally and physically. She was your ultimate homemaker. That's really all she ever wanted to be. She was an excellent cook. She could sew and knit. She was very loving, very gracious. She was just the best mother you could possibly have.
Barbara Howe's body is brought to the medical examiner's office for autopsy.
My goal in becoming a doctor was to help people, and I'm able to do that as a coroner. Any unusual, suspicious, violent, or unexpected death provides a mystery to be solved and really answers for a family at pretty much the worst moment of their life. So being a physician, that's part of what I do, is to be able to provide them those answers.
Dr. Mannix and her team begin with an external examination.
Mrs. Howe's body showed early signs of decomposition. It appeared that she had been dead probably for a couple days. There's extensive trauma immediately visible. Injuries to her head and neck. The severity of the neck wound, the incised neck wound, it was consistent with a fatal injury.
Barbara Howe bled to death.
We can tell you the facts, what the body tells us, and then it can give law enforcement a path to proceed.
Armed with the cause of death, investigators comb through Barbara's home, looking for evidence of where she was killed.
There were signs of blood. When blood dries and it's smeared, it's brown. It just looks like dirt. Starting back by her bedroom, there's a utility room, and they'd found just a little smear of blood. It was more of a transfer type situation, that somebody had something on them and touched this. And it means somebody has moved around in this house over time with blood on them. In the garage, they show me a couple blood drops on the floor. And quickly you surmise that she ended up in the trunk of her car in the garage of the residence.
2 tiny droplets of dried blood lead investigators to a concealed door.
It's covered in linoleum. It matches the rest of the floor, but it's actually an opening to crawl space under the residence.
Well, there's a sub-basement that's only about 4 feet deep, but it gives enough access for plumbing pipes and for electrical conduits and things of that nature. And so we went down with a light. There was a pool of what appeared to be blood, and there was a plastic bag-like material, and it was soaked in what appeared to be blood also. We concluded that that's where Mrs. Howe had her throat cut.
The blood evidence is sent to the laboratory for identification. Myers and his team continue to scour the home for clues.
There's no forced entry to the residence.
Obviously, she opened the door, but to who and why? So did she know this person? She was a cautious woman, not a scaredy cat, but she would never open the door to a total stranger.
Whenever you have a murdered woman, be it a mother or a grandmother or a teenager, you always start with the family and you work your way out.
The whole family knew that Barbara was worth a considerable sum of money.
She had a really pretty diamond ring from my father. It was oval and kind of on a filigree-looking band.
But when investigators search the house, the precious ring is missing.
We as detectives have to look at everything. Who shows up? Who's trying to be the most help? Sometimes that's a good person of interest. Granddaughter and her boyfriend. When she came up missing, they ingrained themselves in the search for her.
Investigators turn their attention to Barbara's granddaughter.
She is short of money. She's aware of the circumstances that Mrs. Howe lives in. She's aware that she has a valuable diamond on her hand. And she has the capability to get her way into the house under circumstances that somebody else might not.
Who was this? Who'd she open the door to?
Investigators hone in on family members in the grisly murder of Barbara Howe.
There's only so many true motives that can exist. And one of those motives is greed. We have to look at family. You have family members who begin to doubt other family members because there are no answers.
But after an exhaustive search, investigators clear Barbara's granddaughter and her boyfriend of suspicion.
Detective Myers, he followed up on everything and really thoroughly researched. Time went by and he pretty much came back and he said, no, this is not family, which was kind of a relief. But then the bigger question came around, then who?
For detectives, greed is still a viable motive for murder.
The ring was very important. It's $30,000, estimated value. Who's going to take this in?
Detective Myers checked every pawn shop known to man, I think, within a 50-mile area. If we could find the pawn shop, we're going to find the killer.
Anything that we can trace, that we can follow to put us in touch with a physical location where we might have video, where we might have a signed receipt. I went to some places that I could probably never find my way back. I actually had a tour guide who took me some of these places, who knew the area, to some of these mom and pop pawn shops in the hills, looking for this item.
And there was nothing that was able to be developed with respect to that particular diamond.
With the hunt for the ring turning up empty, investigators look to the blood evidence for new leads.
Of course, there's DNA of Barbara Howe, being the blood, but we find another male's DNA intermixed with her DNA on the crawlspace door.
People, given the knowledge that they have in this day and age with this proliferation of TV shows and CSI-type shows, seem to think that DNA is the be-all and end-all of every police investigation. But in reality, a DNA sample can take weeks to come back from a lab, and all you get is a DNA profile, a bunch of numbers, not a picture, not a name, and it's an investigator's job to now find out who owns that profile. And that's not easy.
Myers studies the evidence. He looks for any clues that could point to a perpetrator.
I would look at pictures, crime scene pictures. I would look at all the pictures from the case, probably 3 and 4 times a week. What have I missed? What am I not seeing? And one of the things that jumped out at me one day is her car's extremely clean. On the outside, it was spotless. Does she take it to a car wash? There's only a couple here in Middletown. I called one of them, they said, yeah, we remember her. She came in here all the time. So I go to that car wash.
Investigators wonder if her killer noticed the wealthy widow there and followed her home.
I proceed to ask permission to DNA everybody who works the car wash. And they all readily agreed.
While the DNA is tested, the medical examiner's team completes the autopsy. Investigators hope that some shred of information will lead them to Barbara's killer.
With the autopsy findings, we can demonstrate that there were multiple injuries that occurred prior to her death. There was a laceration to the back of her head, bleeding in the head, injuries on her back, along her spine. The injuries that we see on Mrs. Howe are consistent with blunt force trauma, it being hit, being dropped.
This wasn't just over in a minute. There was movement of the murderer and of the victim.
She also has very obvious incised wounds on her neck from a knife, a nice smooth edge, and a deep cut in her neck.
We know from the scene that she was still alive when he nearly decapitated her because of the volume of blood and because her heart was still beating such that on the autopsy examination, her heart was empty of blood.
The prolonged and vicious beating of Barbara Howe paints a picture of a killer who relishes violence.
If the body's been beaten beyond recognition, if things have been done to the body post-mortem, all of these movements are indicators of a planned and deliberate act. It's also indicators of someone who has taken some great thrill and joy out of what they're doing.
Beyond her wounds, Mrs. Howe's remains offer another insight into the murderer's motivations.
Notice how she is mostly undressed.
Her top was missing, her bottoms were pulled down.
There are so many hallmarks of a sexually motivated event that it's hard not to think of it in that way.
The body also had her hair clipped in a number of places, which was strange, to say the least. What was the reason for that?
It's possible that a perpetrator is trying to get rid of evidence, get rid of DNA, or is it memorabilia?
Was there a deposit of semen in her hair, and that was cut? Her hair was cut in order to remove that evidence.
Why can't we find a ring? Why doesn't she have clothes on? Why are there chunks of her hair cut out? Why is her entire body covered in cleaning products?
These baffling questions lead investigators to a terrifying idea.
Is this person a serial killer?
Investigators fear they're hunting a serial killer in the vicious murder of Barbara Howe.
The killer assaulted the victim, was meticulous in trying to clean up forensic evidence from the crime scene, and then attempted to move the body. These are signs of a serial killer in the making.
Serial killers, generally speaking, take steps to ensure their anonymity. There's a lot of pressure put upon an investigator when you are chasing a serial killer because you don't know when the next victim is going to be identified and the next victim is going to be killed. So there is this race against time in terms of wanting to capture this person before the next victim.
Determined to get a lead before the killer strikes again, investigators reach out to the public.
It was put out to local media that we were looking to see whether anyone had picked up a person walking or hitchhiking. We know the vehicle's left in Middletown, but the crime was done in Monroe. So you either have to have a couple people involved for someone to go pick this person up when they dump this car, or they have to get back to where they started this endeavor in Monroe.
As the police chase tips, the laboratory comes back with DNA results from the staff at the car wash.
The results of those DNA tests all came up negative. They didn't show a single employee's DNA on them.
But Detective Myers is able to find new information about who Barbara was in contact with on the night she disappeared.
We get phone records back and we see the phone call that was made asking if someone could come look at their Lifeline device.
The Lifeline system is a wonderful system for seniors in that they love to live alone and they love to keep their independence. And this device and this technology allows them to do that, knowing in the background that should they not feel well or should they fall or should something more serious happen, they can push a button and the authorities will be notified.
We know that Barbara Howe used her Lifeline religiously in her house.
Investigators learn another resident received a call about her Lifeline device.
What a sweet, nice lady she was. A little bit younger than Mrs. Howe. Lived by herself. And the first thing that I saw when I was introduced to her at her home was two hands full of rings. And we're not talking about plastic or we're not talking about paste jewelry. We're talking about the real stuff.
The man on the phone insisted he come to her residence to check the device.
They told him not to come that night. They're fine. Come tomorrow. And they never came the next day. It was very odd. In looking at Barbara Howe's phone records, we see that she gets a phone call that same night. And it's the same number that called the other resident asking to come to their house. We go, wait a minute here. They were called on a number, what's called a trunk line number from Mount Pleasant, meaning it was a phone that belonged to Mount Pleasant. He called 2 women who are widows and live by themselves to be let in. We know that the maintenance department deals with the lifeline system at the community. So there's a lot of things that start pointing toward someone who has intimate knowledge of the workings of the community.
The idea that staff could be involved also connects with the strange debris scattered throughout the victim's car.
Mrs. Howe's body is covered with dirt that's been sprinkled or spread or rubbed along the body.
So examination of the debris revealed that it consisted of contents of an industrial vacuum cleaner, and that narrowed the focus.
If we could find that vacuum cleaner, and that only perhaps a maintenance man would have that type of knowledge and access, and we would be able to tie it to one of those people. So I asked them to sequester the vacuum cleaners, and they found one that had no vacuum cleaner bag. Now, obviously, my radar and everybody else's radar went up on that one.
Detective Myers interviews dozens of male employees at Mount Pleasant.
The scope of things that we looked at involving each person, alibis, phone records, surveillance videos of places, it's immense on some people to show that they truly aren't involved. You know, we ask everybody for a DNA swab. Every one of them was checked against the unknown male that we had at this time, and we had no matches. And that really takes the wind out of your sail. You just stop and take a deep breath, and where do we go from here? What do we do? We're missing something.
Mrs. Howe's family, this is their worst nightmare.
I just felt like it was just going nowhere. And it drove me nuts, because I had to know why.
It was an absolute whodunit.
With no new suspects and few leads, investigators and Barbara Howe's family fear a vicious killer could escape justice.
It's interesting how in a family, when a crisis of this magnitude happens, how differently all of us reacted to it. And mine was anger. And I thought, I'm gonna get this person. I don't care how long it takes me, and we're not gonna let this die.
Haunted by the prospect of the case turning cold, Detective Myers works around the clock.
This investigation probably consumes 18 file boxes. There's not a week goes by that I don't look at evidence again and again. If I can't figure out something from it, we can't rule anybody out.
But there is one thing Detective Myers can't shake. A nagging suspicion someone connected to the retirement community is somehow involved.
We know a call had to be made from a phone at the community. We know that somebody had intimate knowledge of the residents, this crawl space. Somebody knew it was there.
We had nothing but circumstantial evidence of employees at Mount Pleasant. And then an amazing thing occurred.
This is Detective Myers. This may be nothing. It may be something. It's been playing with me since I guess this happened.
Uh-huh.
I have a brother that used to work for Mount Pleasant.
Okay. What's his name?
It's Danny French.
What did he do there?
He was a maintenance man.
He was maintenance? Okay. How long did he work there when he did work there?
About 10 years.
About 10 years?
Yeah.
He said it gave him pause, and he kept running it through his head. And even his behavior he said he wasn't a close, personal, touchy-feely type person. But he gave him a hug and told him he loved him, and it was almost like he was saying goodbye, is what he tells me.
It's been nagging at me because once I read that article and I was thinking, well, I just saw Danny, and that was the date I saw him, and then now 2 days later, he's
Jetting out of town?
Yeah, and especially if he's sitting out of town for a couple of months, that's not Danny.
Right.
I'm kind of struggling with this, and it's made me sick.
We thought that this is something we definitely need to look into, and quickly.
Investigators build a full profile on Daniel French.
He is a loner. He's a recluse. He just doesn't talk to people. He was a voracious reader, CSI novels.
Criminals are often students of crime. They learn from talking to other criminals. They learn from watching crime shows, from reading detective magazines. And all the while, they're learning different techniques to evade potential detection and arrest.
A dead body is very difficult to carry around. The body had to be put into the portal and then had to be dragged out of that portal. And that's a dead weight coming through a small square hole in the floor and then picked up and put in the trunk of a car without getting blood all over the place. That takes a big person to do that, and Daniel French certainly fit the profile.
I look at the phone records, and there's a local phone call from the morning of October 30th at about 6:15 in the morning. This guy called the number, and they answer Ace number 1 taxi. And they told me, we have all our records. We have the driver's sheets, what number called, where they were picked up and where they were taken. I interviewed the driver, and they explained to me they picked a male up. They describe him at Walmart, and he's on his way to work and his car breaks down. And he needs to go back home. He can't tell them exactly where he wants to go. He tells them he'll show them. But immediately the thing that jumps out at me is, you don't know your own address.
The store is only a mile from where Barbara Howe's vehicle and body were found. To investigators, the passenger's behavior is highly suspicious.
We immediately go to Walmart, and we get this surveillance video. On it, you can see him walk into the parking lot from the direction where Barbara Howe's vehicle was dumped. There was no mistaking, it was Daniel French in the video.
The surveillance footage puts Daniel French in Middletown during the time frame of Barbara's murder.
Daniel French gave the taxi driver a cock and bull story about why he needed a ride from Walmart's parking lot all the way back to Monroe. What have you got to hide? He's completing the circle with respect to driving the car to Middletown, dropping it there, walking to Walmart's, getting a cab back to Monroe, which he did, and lying about why he was going in this manner. Circumstantial stuff doesn't prove that he did it, but it sure does put him as a real candidate for this.
While police continue to look for Daniel French, Detective Myers tracks down his son.
And he lives in the Middletown area. He speaks with us. He gives us DNA. He is possibly a key to finding Daniel. We get the results back from the DNA, and we have a hit.
Daniel French's son's DNA is a partial match to the DNA found in Barbara Howe's home.
The DNA on the crawl space cover does not belong to his son. But it belongs to somebody in his family. Now I really want to find Daniel French.
Investigators spend 2 months searching for former Mount Pleasant employee Daniel French. He's the prime suspect in the murder of Barbara Howe.
It's January 18th, where we find that Daniel French finally comes out of hiding in the woods and is found in his sister's car in the early morning hours, almost frozen. And she calls me on the 18th and says Daniel wants to turn himself in.
Detective Myers spends hours interviewing Daniel French.
How old are you now, Daniel? I forget. 57 or 58?
58.
You want water? He agrees to give us DNA. He agrees to give us his fingerprints. And we ask him some open-ended questions, and he tells us certain things. Things that we know aren't truthful. Did he ever take a cab ride? Did his car ever break down? Was he ever at Walmart in Middletown at this time of day? All of those he lies to.
Myers confronts French about the murder of Barbara Howe.
Well, what have you thought about this stuff that I've told you here? About what happened up there? What do you think about that?
I didn't do it.
No, I'm not saying that. I was just saying, what do you think about it?
It's a terrible thing.
Is it surprising that it happened there? I'm trying to get your insight on it since you worked there for so long. Why does it surprise you that it happened there? Put yourself in the shoes of the family.
But I didn't do it.
Well, I didn't ask you if you did it here.
That's the way I'm perceiving it, and I didn't do it.
We knew he did it, but we have to prove it to a jury.
A week later, the laboratory results are in.
And lo and behold, Daniel French's DNA was on the portal.
That his DNA is a match.
And you say to yourself, case solved. You've got him. You've got him. And regrettably, that's what a lot of people also thought that weren't involved in law enforcement. There's a real good reason, and that is because Daniel French had worked on that portal and had gone into that sub-basement during the time that he worked at Mount Pleasant. There were work orders for that.
We confront him about the DNA evidence, and he says, well, I've been in that house a million times.
DNA can last a long time, and there's nothing to show that that DNA came from that night.
Investigators look for another way to prove their case.
I called the lady who cleaned the house for Mrs. Howe, and she kept really good records, you know. Did you ever clean the utility room? And she said the water softener overflowed. I had to clean it all up.
She had actually mopped the mechanical room, the crawl space cover and all.
The room was cleaned months after Daniel French was employed at Mount Pleasant.
This truly was the key to this case. I mean, this is the one that turned it from a circumstantial case into a direct case.
Washed out, any DNA evidence that was there previously.
And therefore, the DNA that was found now was from Daniel French after he left the employment.
The DNA evidence, paired with other key discoveries in the case, give police everything they need to charge Daniel French with first-degree murder.
The information that we provide in the autopsy is a foundation to solving the rest of the case.
From this death investigation and from the autopsy, we know that Daniel gained access to her house, he beat her, then he took her down to the crawl space and he nearly decapitated her. He left her to bleed out before he moved her to the trunk of the car. He tried to destroy evidence by throwing bleach on her body. This is the work of a real monster.
I just think our law enforcement and our prosecutor's office does a great job in running with that information and seeing it to its conclusion.
He was a pretty shrewd guy, diabolically shrewd. Somebody who concocted this scam to get into this woman's house, claiming that she had a defect with her medical alert system. He just needed to come in and check. He was a serial killer on the way with his first serial victim. The wolf came to the door, and she let in the wolf, and that's what killed her.
Confronted with the indisputable evidence, Daniel French confesses.
He just admitted that he murdered Mrs. Howe. And then he took her ring and claims he threw it away when he was disposing of stuff that he had taken from the house.
For this horrific and disturbing killing, Daniel French is sentenced to life in prison without parole.
This whole case had a real profound effect on many people. I know that the Monroe Police Department and Detective Myers, they were phenomenal.
The medical examiner and investigators' pursuit of justice are what cracked this deeply unsettling murder case.
Patience and persistence of all the team involved was key to bringing this to the resolution that's come.
It took everybody, and it took 3 years. But he's never going to walk the streets again.